Let's continue talking about fundamentals of swine nutrition and nutrient requirements, and let's talk about now the most important nutrient for pigs. Water is the most important nutrient and is usually the forgotten nutrient in nutrition. Water is the essence of life and is the nutrient that the pig requires in the biggest amount on a daily basis. If we think about it, the body of a pig, if it's an adult, is somewhere between 50 to 80% of the mass is water, and in younger pigs is as high as 80%. Indeed, if we look at in this table, we can see that the water content of the body is as high as 81.5%, and it will go down to about 50% in older pigs. But the vast majority of the weight of a pig is water. The functions of water are many, but we can summarize them in three main categories. One is a component of metabolism. Most, if not all, enzymatic reactions occur in an aqueous medium, and therefore water is needed. The digestion, those enzymes, when are secreted, they're secreted in aqueous solutions or in solutions that contain water. We have blood, and then therefore water is a solvent in blood, is the main carrier of everything that goes in blood, and we have blood present in tissues and in about all secretions of the animals. When we're talking about excretion, it's a main way to excrete nutrients, whether we're talking about urine. We also have excretions of saliva, semen, and sweat. Even though pigs don't sweat, but in those animals that do sweat, like us humans, sweat contains a lot of water. Pigs can reduce or they can use water evaporation via their mouth for a little bit of cooling. So when we see pigs that are panting, like we see dogs panting, because dogs don't sweat as well, it's basically they're trying to lose water by this panting behavior to try to cool themselves. And finally, water is used to control body temperature. And one of the main functions of water as a regulator of body temperature, obviously, is volume and the amount of liquid that is contained. We also talk about that for most mammals. We talk about sweat and the ability of sweat to cool via evaporating, losing of that water. This is not the case in pigs like we talk about, but pigs do have panting. If we look at the daily water balance and usage in pigs, we basically come down to two main categories: water input and water output. Water input, the biggest source is obviously the drinking water, and that's why we're going to be talking a lot about water and drinking water and water quality here. There's also a certain amount of water that is present in the feed. Even when we feed dry feeds, most dry feeds are around somewhere between 89 and 87% dry matter, which means they contain somewhere between 11, 12, 13% moisture, that is water. And then there is a certain amount of water that can be produced endogenously in the body of the pig via different metabolic reactions. When we're talking about water output, growth comes to mind. And why do we consider water output? Well, when we're doing a balance, as tissues are growing, then we have water accumulation there. The biggest output of water from a pig, it's going to be urine, followed by feces. And think about that feces, most of the time, the stool as well formed. It's not necessarily diarrhea, but even stools that are well formed contain a considerable amount of moisture or water. And then the other big source of water output will be in the case of milk for lactating sows, the delivery of piglets and all the amniotic fluids for gestating sows when they farrow, and other sources as well. When we look at the amount of water that a pig needs, we're talking about the requirement. So in rough terms, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio, or about 3 liters of water per liter of feed intake, plus a little bit of an intercept over there. So for each kilogram of feed intake, or if we have a pig that is consuming 1 kilogram of feed, then we're going to need about 3.2 liters. And then the equation that provides here is the equation from the 2012 NRC. The true requirement of water is hard to estimate because there is a lot of waste of water when the pigs drink. And it doesn't matter how good or how well we adjust those drinkers, there's still going to be some wastage that is hard to use. What we know is we have some recommendations of what's the amount of water used on a liters per day basis for different pig classes, going from suckling all the way to mature animals, including gestating, lactating, and sows, as well as boars. In order to provide water to the pigs, we need to have waterers, and we need to have drinkers. Those drinkers and those waterers, they need to be readily accessible to pigs, and they need to provide enough amount of water so each pig in the pen can drink water comfortably. Water pressure, normally we talk about somewhere of less than 20 psi for nursery pigs, and then somewhere between 15 and 40 psi for growth finishing pigs. Very important, it's to remember that the ideal or the proper height for the drinker is at the shoulder level of the pig. And as the pig grows, then the height of that drinker needs to be adjusted so pigs are always drinking at a comfortable height. In general terms, 1 drinker or 1 waterer will be enough for 10 pigs, but as we'll see in other talks, there's a lot of different varieties and different types of drinkers and waterers, and then we should follow the manufacturer's recommendation in terms of the number of pigs that each one of those drinkers can support. We have recommendations or suggestions of drinker height depending on the different sizes of the pigs. But again, the easiest way to remember is that the drinker needs to be about shoulder height with the pig. And it is important that these drinkers, as I mentioned before, are easily adjusted, if not on a daily basis, but at least on a weekly basis, so pigs are always drinking comfortably. The minimal flow rate that we have here is depending on the type of class of pigs that we're talking about, and it goes from suckling pigs all the way up to grower, finishing, gestating, and lactating animals. Given the importance of water, we're going to dedicate the next few slides to talk about water quality. Why is water quality important? We need to have water that is as pure as possible, but it's impossible to obtain pure water for swine operations. Even us humans, regardless of where you live, we don't drink pure water. So we need to make sure that the water that we're drinking is as high quality as possible. In those places where city drinking water is available, the quality should be adequate both for the pigs as well as for humans, and I'll be emphasizing this. When we talk about water quality, we need to define the main contaminants of that quality, and we can put them in 3 general categories: contamination of microorganisms, contamination of minerals, and contamination of chemicals. The water that we provide to pigs should be of the highest quality possible that we can find. And then if we don't have a good quality water, then we should be thinking about how to improve that quality of water. Where is that water coming from? It's important, but more important is to keep in mind that we need to be analyzing that water periodically. Normally, we tend to think about taking feed samples and send those feed samples to be analyzed in the lab to make sure that we're getting the nutrients that we're paying for. Well, we should be doing the same thing with water and treating water with the same, if not higher, standards than we do for feed, because it's the nutrient that pigs require in the greatest amount. And the majority of the growth of pigs is going to be water. What's interesting is water, of all the nutrients, it's the cheapest nutrient that we have. And because it's the cheapest, we tend to ignore it. Now, we have different sources of water, and whether it comes from a well, from a spring, from a city, that water needs to be tested. That is the water and the quality of the water that is coming into the farm. Then, most likely, that water is stored in certain type of tanks in the farm, and those need to be maintained periodically. Once every certain amount of time, they need to be emptied, they need to be washed, they need to be inspected. We need to make sure that they are properly maintained. The same is true for all the water lines as well as for all the drinkers in the pen. We don't want to have drinkers that are dirty, that are harvesting microorganisms, because that could be a problem of a source of disease spread. And up to this point, if we have done a great job maintaining high quality of water, all that can go literally down the drain if we don't have drinkers that are properly maintained and functioning and providing high sanitation to the pigs. What is the right quality of water for pigs? And it's pretty simple. If you will not drink the water that you're providing to your pigs, then you are providing poor quality water to your pigs. If you are unable to drink the water that the pigs are drinking, then why are the pigs drinking that water? Pigs require high quality of water, just like we humans do require a high quality of water. There are different ways to measure quality, and we're going to talk about some of them here. One is total dissolved solids. This is basically a measurement of the amount of inorganic matter that is dissolved in water, like calcium and magnesium salts and others. And then we have a table here of recommendations with different levels of total solids. The pigs have a wide range of tolerance, but once we get to levels of total solids of greater than 7,000, that water is totally unfit for pigs. And for those that have values greater than 1,000, we need to be careful that we adapt the animals, and then if possible, we should be able to look for ways to reduce the amount of total dissolved solids. The pH is a quality that is important to the water. Most water around the world will fall within the acceptable range of 6.5 to 8.5 units of pH. What's important here to remember about the pH is that the pH of the water can affect the chlorination of the water, can cause pipe corrosion, can cause deposits of calcium and magnesium salts, can cause problems with the pipes, can cause reduction of the flow rate because those pipes are being constricted by deposits. The quality of water and the pH may also have an effect on the amount of microorganisms or biofilm that can form and live within those pipes. And also very important, the pH of the water can have a huge impact on the ability to deliver water medication. Some medications require water with specific pH ranges. Above and below that, then these medication compounds could precipitate, could change to another chemical form, and therefore it is very important to know what is the pH in overall, what is the water quality that I have in the farm for my pigs. Hardness is another water quality that we look at. And hardness basically refers to the amount of calcium and magnesium salts that are dissolved in the water. And we can categorize the water as soft, hard, or very hard, depending on how many ppms of calcium and magnesium we have in the water. Even for waters that are very hard, we rarely have any problems with pigs. The main problem is we have to look at what is the amount of scale accumulation in the pipes and if this is going to restrict water flow. And the other component here is to check out if and when you are going to deliver medications via water, make sure that the pH and the concentrations of calcium, magnesium, and other minerals are going to be compatible with the medication that wants to be delivered. Sulfates, it's one of those qualities that is very easy to determine using this very sensitive diagnostic apparatus. Sulfates can be a problem in well water in certain parts of North America. If the water contains high levels of sulfates, the water is going to smell like rotten eggs. Because of this smell, it's going to have certain taste. A good component of taste is actual smell. If we're drinking water that doesn't smell good, then we're not going to be inclined to drink that water. Pigs will behave just like us humans. If the water has a foul smell, they won't like to drink it, and they will drink as little water as possible. And again, the majority of the growth on a pig, it's going to be in terms of water. Nitrates are another contaminant in water and another one that we have levels to be concerned. And this is mainly because high levels of nitrate in the water can interfere with the oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin, because these nitrates can reduce hemoglobin to methemoglobin. And by depriving the tissues of oxygen, then basically we're slowing down the metabolism. And if we slow down the metabolism, we're going to slow down the growth of the pigs. There are a variety of other contaminants that we can talk about it. And then water quality will be just a whole course, if not a whole major at a university. But mainly the other contaminants are other elements like aluminum, boron, cobalt, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, some of the heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, lead, mercury, vanadium, selenium, and others. And then a big category where we put other chemical substances like fertilizers, dyes, humic substances, which is a way to describe dirt, phenolic compounds, petrochemicals, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, leftover disinfectant products that are meant to disinfect, but they're not meant to be consumed by the pigs, and a variety of different compounds. And we get to the part of water quality that we're probably most familiar with, and that is the presence of microorganisms. And these microorganisms could be bacteria, could be viruses, and could be parasites. So it's important to know that the water needs to be free of any microorganism before it's consumed by the pig. Unless, obviously, we are purposely providing a probiotic in the water, but that's a different story. So normally we want to make sure that when we take a water sample to send it out to the lab, that we're going to perform both a chemical analysis as well as a microbiological analysis. And then what do we do if we don't have good quality of water at the farm? Well, we need to basically find out where that quality is failing in order to determine what's the course of action that we need to take, which in general terms is going to be somewhere between filtration of that water, chlorination to eliminate microorganisms, maybe UV light to reduce the amount of microorganisms, could be aeration if we have problems with palatability and sulfites. And then there's another variety, and then there's specialists around the world that can specifically provide or suggest different type of systems in order to improve the quality of the water that the pigs are drinking. As I mentioned before, water is a nutrient, and water is the most important nutrient for pig, and water is the nutrient that the pig requires in the biggest amount on a daily basis. And like any other nutrients, then the needs of water could be affected by several different conditions. The environmental temperature, if it's hot, the pigs are going to consume more water because they need to pant. They may be wasting more water because they want to get their bodies wet in order to have that evaporative cooling. The relative humidity, the health of a pig, a normal pig or a pig with diarrhea will have different needs for water consumption. As we talk about it, the amount of feed, because there is a relationship of about 3 liters of water needed per each kilogram of feed intake. The amount of protein in the diet, or the amount of salt in the diet. The greater the salt, the greater the protein, and up to a certain point, the greater the fiber content in the diet, then the more water that the pigs are going to consume. And the water content on the diet. Most of us are familiar with dry feeds, and that's the most common feed that is used for pigs. Now, there are certain producers that will have diets that are liquid diets. And then, of course, a pig that is consuming a liquid diet will have a different need for water from the drinker than a pig that is consuming a dry diet. At the end of the day, the requirement, which is the amount, the grams of water per day that a pig needs, it's independent of if it's drinking dry, semi-liquid, or a liquid diet, because it's a nutrient, and nutrient requirements are expressed on a grams per day basis. And finally, the chemical composition of the water will have a huge impact on the intake of pigs. And here we talk about the hardness, the taste, the smell, the salinity, the presence of certain minerals, or the presence of certain contaminants that can make the water unpleasant to drink. And if it's unpleasant to drink, then the pigs are not going to drink as much as they should. Let's summarize some of the concepts that we have talked thus far. What is the most important nutrient for an animal? We have talked a lot about pigs here, but it could be any animal. What is the most important nutrient? And it is water. There's no question about the most important nutrient for any animal is water. Most of the weight gain of a growing animal is what? Okay, yes, it's muscle, it's lean tissue, but let's remember that muscle and that lean tissue, it's about 80% water. Therefore, most of the weight gain of a pig in this case is going to be water. And then the easiest question of them all, what quality of water do we need for pigs? We need the exact same quality of water for pigs as the quality of water that we need for human consumption. Summarizing, pigs need nutrients and energy on a daily basis, and those estimates of how much of those nutrients and energy are needed, we can get that from the different recommendations, and the animals obtain these nutrients and energy via the digestion of the feed. It is very important to estimate the nutrient requirements in grams per day of your own pigs. And how do you determine in your own pigs? Why is this important? Because this will determine the amount of protein deposition that these animals will exhibit, and that number, that value, will determine the need for all the nutrients. So it is also very important to have good and accurate and precise estimates of feed intake, because the nutrient requirements are expressed on a grams per day, which we then will correct using feed intake in order to put certain percent of or density of these nutrients in the diets that we formulate. And this is why it's very important to know what the consumption is, so we can make the right adjustment and we can provide these nutrients in the right proportion compared to the rest of the diet. Water is the cheapest nutrient, is the most important nutrient and is the one that is required in the greatest amount and is the one that most nutritionists and sadly sometimes that the most farm managers and most production managers tend to forget. You can formulate the best feed in the world, or you can hire the best nutritionist and can formulate the best feed in the world with the best quality. But if you pair that excellent feed with a really poor quality of water, you are going to have a poor performance of animals. Therefore, we need to make sure that the quality of the water is as high or higher than the quality of feed that we're feeding to pigs.